following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to another episode of Sports Chatter TV. I'm your host, Evan Bell, alongside my co-host here, Steve Atkinson, and we're a show that discusses the four major professional sports. And today we're going to get started with a little Major League Baseball. A big debate that's been going on in the Major League so far, Steve. The past couple of weeks has been the All Star game, obviously coming up in a couple of days here. The big debate was Yasiel Puig, who's the wonder child for the LA Dodgers right now. He's only played in 35 games, but he's pretty much taken the league by storm. And the debate was, should Puig get voted into the All Star game based on his limited time that he's played? He's only played 35 games. Jonathan Papelbon, closer for the Phillies, came out and said, I don't think he should because of his limited resume. Do you think a player should not be able to play in the All-Star game only because he's played a certain amount of games, or should it just, if the time's right, do you think he should be allowed to play?
Well, first off, I don't know why Papelbon is chiming in. I mean, I feel like there's a little sense of jealousy there. But, I mean, ultimately, I think 35 games is enough you can tell a player's caliber from that. I mean, just looking at his play style, his bat is electric. It wakes up the team itself, and his playing in the field is phenomenal as well. And you can tell that the Dodgers are just really rallying behind him. And, Jay-Z, who's, a notorious agent now in his Rock Nation, he's their latest target. So, he wouldn't be getting looks from Jay-Z if he was a nobody.
Yeah, I mean, Puig is the one LA scout that said that he's the best hitter he's ever seen before he signed with the Dodgers. So he has a ton of potential. I mean, I think he should. I don't think his only limited playing time should not allow him to play in the game. I mean, some players are supporting, saying he should be allowed to play. Other players are saying you can't put someone in who's only played 35 games. He might just be a flash in the pan. But that's definitely something to follow, just because I think it would be great for the All-Star game, because hence it is the All-Star game.
Absolutely.
You want stars there. It's not the all-statistics game. It's not the all-career amount of games played. It's stars. Right. So you want your stars there.
And, ultimately while the players enjoy it, it's really about the fans. The fans go to see a good game. They want some home field advantage there. And, I think having Puig would be a great addition. And, just ultimately, he's a great player. And the All-Star game itself, if anything, is a resume builder. Players love to say, hey, I was a 5-time All-Star.
Yeah.
So it'd be great for Puig.
I mean, the All-Star game itself, I think, is a little not good for the league, just because home field advantage for the World Series is based on which league wins that. But that's just a debate for another day. But another topic that came up, another story that came out this week, I should say, John Rocker, former infamous pitcher, known for, making crazy comments and whatnot during his playing career. He's obviously not playing in the league anymore. Came out and said the other day that players were better when they were on steroids, on the juice, as he said, and that, it was more entertaining for the fans, that fans want entertainment. They don't want to, see players bunt and whatnot. Do you think it was better if players are on steroids, if they're off? Does it really matter in the long run?
I think it absolutely matters in the long run. For me, always growing up, playing Little League and stuff like that, you're told it's about the integrity of the game. It's about the pure skill, who's got the love for the game. And then, growing up, we saw guys like Mark McGwire hit 1 million home runs, Barry Bonds chasing the record. And while it's entertaining to watch, I think it ultimately takes away from the integrity of the game. Because if you compare them to, say, a guy like Hank Aaron, who did it all on pure skill, where do you draw the line?
I mean, that whole era with the Bonds, McGwire, Sosa, the chances of them getting voted in the Hall of Fame is slim, just because, the people, the baseball writers of America, the people who vote them in, they just sort of disregard that era and say that, everyone took steroids in that era, so, no one should be allowed to get voted in. But, I think you should allow it, because, I'm sure players are taking them and getting away with it right now as we speak.
Oh, I'm sure.
But
you see players all the time who are 35 plus, and then they come back from an injury and they're pumping iron. They're gaining a lot of weight, a lot of muscle. That just doesn't happen at that age.
I mean, I think you either got to let players take it, but sort of put a restriction on how much they can take, or enforce stricter policies than they have now, stuff like that. But going into talking about players and steroids, a player who's tested positive for steroids, David Ortiz, the other night broke the all-time hits records for a DH for Major League Baseball, making him one of the all-time greats for the Red Sox and for the Major League Baseball in general. But the question is, people are raising, is designated hitter actually a position? They don't play in the field. Obviously the player just hits, and you don't see many designated hitters in the Hall of Fame. Do you think players should be, sort of bypassed just because they only hit rather than played the field?
I don't think so, no. I mean, if you look at David Ortiz's career, he's played first base a few times. Was he phenomenal in the field? Absolutely not. But, I mean, look what he's done for Red Sox Nation. I mean, he's Big Papi, as they call him. Everyone rallies behind the guy. He's a franchise player. And, critics will say, oh, yeah, he broke a record for hits, but it's because he's not good enough to play in the field. He's not a good all-around player. But it's still a record that can't be overlooked. I mean, I think he'll be a future Hall of Famer, and his production really shows.
I mean, I think he will too, just because I think he's not just the most popular designated hitter in the league, he's one of the most popular players in general. So, I mean, I think that will help him get in the Hall of Fame, but we'll see where that goes, just because that's hopefully a long time away for Red Sox fans for the end of his career. But transitioning on to the NHL here, obviously the playoffs just wrapped up a couple weeks ago. Training camp starting in September, so it's a quick turnaround here for the boys. And a big Bruins move 1 or 2 days ago. Tuukka Rask, their goaltender, 8-year contract, $56 million, makes him tied for first in the league as the highest paid goalie, tied with Pekka of Nashville. Well deserved, I think, after his Stanley Cup run.
I agree, absolutely. I mean, I feel like the Bruins' hands were a little tied here, because, obviously he's proved himself to be an elite goaltender. So it's either, hey, you can give me what I want, or I'm going to walk and someone's going to pick me up. But something to remember is that Tuukka last year took a deal with the Bruins. He wanted a 1-year contract just to prove himself to the organization and to the hockey world that he's elite. And throughout this season and the playoffs, he's really done so. So I think he's really earned this contract.
Peter Chiarelli, talking about that 1-year contract, he was in a catch-22, I guess you could say. I mean, last year, you really didn't know what to expect from Tuukka. Was he going to be prime time? Was he going to be middle of the road, subpar goalie going forward in the future? So do you give him that big contract last year? Not obviously as long as much money as this. Or do you, like he did, sign him to the 1-year contract, see what he does, see if he's the goalie you think he is, and then sign him? So obviously if he had signed him last year, they would have saved money and years, but I think they made the right move with the 1 year, because then you're able to see that he's a Stanley Cup caliber goalie.
I think so too. I mean, obviously he was backup for Tim Thomas during the Great Cup run. You didn't really get to see his skills showcased too much, but I mean, throughout this season, you could just see it in the playoffs. I mean, shutting down Pittsburgh, a great offensive team, his skill really just showed, and he really did earn this contract.
Another big Bruins move was someone they didn't sign, was someone they actually traded away. The Showtime Tyler Seguin there, the 21-year-old, gets the boot from the Bruins. As soon as he's gone, you start to hear rumors about his work ethic, his, off-ice issues per se.
Right.
I think they gave up on him too early, to be honest. I would have kept him for 1 more year. He's 21. He's only been in the year 3 leagues. I think this was the year, the 4th year going forward. If he didn't improve at all, then you get something for him. But I mean, what they got for him in return, I think, was better than they would have got a year from now if he didn't perform.
Oh, definitely. I mean, just looking at his past seasons, his skill showed, and his speed in the neutral zone is something that's unparalleled. But I think the Bruins were kind of just sick of his off-ice antics, really. I mean, you're hearing how the Bruins are sitting him down, having talks with him, telling him that he needs to be a better pro. I mean, hearing that he's running with a tough crowd, there's rumors surfacing. And obviously, we didn't hear this stuff before the trade. So I agree with you. I feel like they kind of gave up on him a little early. Of course, there was a whole hip injury kind of rumor also floating around. But then as soon as he's out of Boston, all these stories and pictures come out. And, of course, the Twitter incident where he comes out with a slanderous tweet, you could say, hackers, as he said. But what's the real story behind that? Who knows? But, I mean, do you think he was kind of chased out of town?
It seems like right now it's sort of I liken it to when Terry Francona left the Red Sox. He sort of it was a smear campaign.
Right.
You know, as soon as he left, all this, they sort of, you know, muddied his reputation. This sort of stuff started coming out, you know, this about Francona. I think it's the same here with Seguin. Stuff's now coming out. They're trying to, you know, try to make the Bruins look better in the public eye. So I don't think they have to, just because I think they got a great player in return, Louis Eriksson. Bruins fans, I'm telling you right now, they're going to love him. He's like a Patrice Bergeron.
I already love him.
Two-way forward. He's going to be unbelievable. He's going to, on that, they're probably playing the first line there with Krejci and Lucic. He's going to be unbelievable. Two-way forward, and I'm very excited about him coming forward. And the two, you know, Riley Smith and Matt Frazier, you know, they're battle for that little third spot line there.
Yeah.
But I think the Bruins, you know, right now they get the best of the deal, but it all hinges on Seguin going forward and his potential, because he could become a 45-goal scorer just like that if he gets the hang of it.
Absolutely. I mean, you can't forget Morrow in the trade as well, another great pickup. But as far as Seguin's future, right now, I am a little nervous for him, because I think he cares more about the hockey lifestyle than he does about hockey itself. I mean, if you look at his opening interview in Dallas, he just arrived. He sits down, and they're grilling him already, asking him questions, asking him how he feels about playing on a pretty young team. And he says, "Oh, you know, I'm pretty excited. It'll be good to be with young guys. I was the only single guy in Boston." I mean, he could have said, "Oh, it'll be a great opportunity to play center for a team. It'll be great to flourish," but no, he says, I was the only single guy. I have more guys to party with and have fun with." And I think if he doesn't smarten up, he could be a potential NHL horror show.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much to sum it up, it seems like he's focused more on his social life rather than his professional NHL career and life. So,
Yeah,
you know, this is a trade you have to look back on after the season or during the season and see really who got the better end of the deal here.
I'll say right now, though, I'll come out and say Boston got the better end of the deal. I mean, the guys you mentioned, Ryan Bouton, or we got rid of Bouton, but Louis Eriksson, I mean, Morrow, Frazier, Smith, all great players. I'm really excited about Eriksson personally. I mean, where do you think we'll put him right now?
I'd say right now, probably first line, put him on the right wing there with, the right wing there with Krejci and Lucic on the left. I think that'd be a good line. I mean, I think Eriksson's a better two-way player than Horton. I don't think he's as physical. But, I mean, that's something they'll probably juggle him Eriksson between the first and the second line, obviously, with Bergeron.
Definitely agree first line's the right spot for him. I mean, when you're looking at who he's going to be playing with, you got a sniper and you got another power forward. Having a guy who's going to always be back-checking, it's not going to hurt at all. And I think that line's really going to click. And, of course, look at their other big pickup, Jerome Iggy Iginla, a grizzled vet. I mean, where do you put him on there, too? The Bruins have been making some great off-season moves.
I say you got to put him on the second line. But speaking of Iginla, someone that Iginla actually played with at one point in his career, just left $77 million on the table there.
Right.
Ilya Kovalchuk, this just broke about 2 hours ago. He had signed a 12-year deal with the New Jersey Devils worth $77 million. And 2 years into his deal, you know, he decides he wants to go back to Russia, live with his family there, have his children grow up there, go play in the KHL, which is, you know, the Russian NHL over there. It's very popular over there. And, I mean, he's obviously not going to get the fame he got over here playing in the KHL, but he'll actually get more money by playing over there. And, obviously, the taxes and whatnot. So, in finale, he'll actually earn more money than $77 million by going to play in the KHL.
Yeah.
But, obviously, I'd love to see him play in the NHL. He's a great player. But, I mean, if it's for his, the right moves for his family and whatnot. I mean, you can't fault the guy.
Yeah, I mean, growing up, I always really admired him as a player, and am I happy about him retiring? No, I think it's a little sad, but like you said, I mean, it's the best move for him, and he ultimately makes more than $77 million because he's closer to his family. I think he'll still be a legend over there because he can still play. I think he was nuts for even accepting that 15-year deal with the Devils. I mean, where's that franchise going right now? Who have they? I mean, they got Schneider.
Yeah.
But who else? Like Michael Ryder. They're not really impressing me. I don't think he was that impressed either.
I mean, that leaves a big hole in their offense because he was obviously the number one overall player, I think, and they're obviously their number one offensive player.
Definitely.
That leaves a big hole. And transitioning onto the NFL here, a player that got $1 million less than Kovalchuk, Matthew Stafford, just signed a contract extension, a second one there with the Detroit Lions for $76 million, and this makes him, by the time he turns 29, Stafford will have made $94 million just with the Detroit Lions, who he's played with his whole career. Which leads me on to the question, maybe we could do a little pick here.
Sure.
Who's the most indispensable NFL quarterback to their team? Like who, obviously when Brady got injured those years ago, I mean, you would think he'd be indispensable, yet Matt Castle stepped in. I mean, that's sort of not a fair example there, but, if Stafford goes down, are the Lions just going to tank? Like, who is the most, if you had to pick out of the whole 32 teams, if one player went down, even a better example, Peyton Manning with the Colts gets injured, they win 2 games.
Yeah, terrible season for them. Let's see, most indispensable. I mean, looking at Stafford himself, he's really pivotal for the Lions. I mean, who does he have as wide receivers? He's got Calvin Johnson. I mean, who else? He makes the team. He's got Titus Young and Brendan Pettigrew. He's made them useful. But I think most indispensable quarterback has to be Matt Ryan. I mean, he was first in the NFL for completion percentage. He was 5th for passing yards, touchdowns, passing rating. I mean, since his arrival in 2008, he's made the Falcons a contender almost every single year, and he's really just become a franchise quarterback. I think losing him would greatly hurt the team.
Yeah, I mean, if I had to rank Matt Ryan for, levels of quarterback, I think that he'd be, the second tier right below the first tier. So I think first tier you'd have Breeze, Manning, and Brady. And then right in that second tier of, next 4 to 5 quarterbacks, I think Matt Ryan's in there.
Definitely.
So, I mean, I agree with you that he's definitely indispensable to his team. But I'm actually going to go a different route. I mean, I obviously could say Brady just because they don't really have a backup quarterback right now. But I'm kind of going to go, off the reservation here, per se, and go with Cam Newton of the Carolina Panthers.
Okay.
Hear me out. I know the Panthers aren't that good.
It's a strange pick.
They're not that good. But they've been on the cusp of making the playoffs here.
Yep.
And Cam Newton, I think, is the best athlete playing the quarterback position right now. Best athlete. I don't think he's the best quarterback. But he makes that Panthers team would win 1 game if he went down. And right now they're winning 7, 8 games. They just missed the playoffs last season. And I think this season they're going to make it. So I'm just going to have to go with Cam Newton because I think if they lost him, the team around him isn't that good to begin with. But if he went down, they would probably be like the Colts a couple years ago and win one game maybe.
But, I mean, you got guys like Steve Smith and you got a couple other
decent
name players out there.
Who's going to throw the ball to Steve Smith is the question.
I mean, I don't know. I don't even know who the backup to Carolina is.
I know. I mean, you could go.
That speaks wonders for Cam Newton already.
I mean, you could sort of rig that question and say who's the most indispensable. Go with a really bad team like Arizona Cardinals. Yeah. Carson Palmer is their starting quarterback. If he goes down, who's their backup? Like who? Their backup's pretty bad if they can't beat out Carson Palmer.
Right.
So,
but I mean, to say he's the best athlete, now that's a statement. I mean, in the quarterback position itself, I mean, look at guys like Colin Kaepernick or Russell Wilson.
So
from Seattle.
For your other 3 athletes, would you go Kaepernick? Like you said, Wilson.
Probably.
A healthy RG3.
If the injury never occurred?
Yeah, if he's healthy.
Yes.
Like 100%. So those three. And, I mean, I can't really think of anyone else off the top of my head.
I mean,
Michael Vick, maybe?
I mean, Vic seems to think so himself.
Yeah.
But I mean, those are the top three who come to mind. But to say he's the best athlete,
I think he is. Just his sheer, he's 6'6", like 230, 240, and he was their leading rusher last season, which is he's a giant of a man to begin with. He's bigger than all the other quarterbacks that we just mentioned.
Right.
Kaepernick's maybe a little. I think they're the same height, but
if
he's
you
a
look
little
at
skinnier.
if you look at speed as well, I think Kaepernick's a little bit faster.
I'd agree.
Wilson and Newton are about the same speed, but I'd say best athlete quarterback position. I'm saying Kaepernick. You'd want Newton on a quarterback.
I'd rather take. Like if I had to choose between Newton and Kaepernick, I would rather go. I mean, see, it's all Kaepernick, it's all on potential. I know when they made the Super Bowl.
Right. I'll give you Kaepernick has a much better team surrounding him. He's got a lot better caliber players. So they make him look a lot better.
So
but he's still a
if you
tremendous
put
athlete.
Cam Newton on San Francisco, do you think they would be as good?
Do I think you'd be as good as Colin Kaepernick?
Yeah. Do you think the team would be as good with Cam Newton as their starting quarterback?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, I can't dispute that the guy's a tremendous athlete. He's got an unbelievable arm, and he makes the Carolina Panthers. But I think for the 49ers, Kaepernick is really their guy because Kaepernick clicks with the offense a lot better, and he understands the routes. And I think Cam likes to go rogue a little bit more and run a lot more screen plays.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really go wrong with either quarterback,
Exactly.
I think. So, I mean, that's just a fun question that, think about who's the most indispensable there. But other big news today was the New England Patriots in the news again for all the wrong reasons with cornerback Alfonso Dennard arrested, well, in suspicion of a DUI case.
Right.
And this is just a bad month for the Patriots. You have the Aaron Hernandez story still, ongoing.
Absolutely.
More and more details coming out about that. But Alfonso Dennard, just based on in a football, we're just based on the field here, he was probably their other starting quarterback besides Aqib Talib. And this leaves a big hole for the Patriots on the field.
I mean, definitely. And I think that a lot of fans from around the NFL are kind of thinking, this is great. The Patriots are going to fade away. And I mean, at what point does Robert Kraft step up and say, hey, Bill, I think that the type of players we're picking is really hurting our image here. And, I think a lot of people forget that this was Dennard's second offense. I mean, he was arrested previously in Nebraska for assaulting a police officer. He's saying, they have it out for me. But if that's the case, he refused to take a breathalyzer at the scene, as well as a chemical test. And, that's an easy fix. Why don't you just do it and get everyone off your back? So I agree. It's been a very rough month if you're a Patriots fan.
For Dennard, why would you go back to Lincoln, Nebraska, where you got arrested in the first place for punching an officer and, even be in a situation where you could get a DUI? It's not like you're going to get a break per se. I mean...
Yeah, this was at 2 a.m.
Yes, I mean, and I just think the Pats are going to let him go. I mean, I think they're just going to cut him.
I think that's the smart move. I mean, he was a 7th-round pick. He probably, based off his skill alone.
He was like Hernandez. He fell in the draft because of that. They said he had, 2nd to 4th round talent.
I would have projected him 2nd round to be picked. And like you said, I mean, his reputation dropped in the 7th round. He was pretty much a steal for us. He was him and Talib were great additions. But I agree. I think at this point, second offense, he isn't that amazing of a player that we really need him on the team. I think it's time to cut our losses.
Yeah, I agree. I think they should just let him go. They preach the Patriot way, which is like, we got all these wholehearted good guys, and these 2 cases popping up within weeks is not a good look for them.
No.
Not a good look for the NFL in general with all these players being arrested. Roger Goodell, the commissioner of the league, has to look at this and maybe fix their policies, their rules.
Yeah.
Maybe institute better programs.
Be a little bit stricter.
Yes, I mean, it's just sort of disturbing in a way with all these players. getting suspended, especially on our favorite team here, the Patriots.
Right.
And just in a football sense on the field, two big losses on the field itself. But another Boston team, transitioning here to some NBA talk. Another Boston team that suffered some big losses on the court.
Right.
Doc Rivers leaves to go to the LA Clippers, and then Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce go to the Brooklyn Nets in a deal. And then, the big news for the Celtics with the past week was they hired Butler coach Brad Stevens, 36 years old. Butler, mid-major program, not a big, big name like Duke, Kentucky, Louisville.
Right. Yeah.
How do you think, the big question around here now is how do you think he works with Rajon Rondo? Rondo is the face of the franchise now. I mean, he's been known to be a little hostile, a little, conflicts with Doc, and Doc is obviously a more experienced coach.
Right.
How do you think Stevens deals with Rondo? Do you think the Celtics, trade away Rondo, or is his value still somewhat high? And the Celtics going forward, I think they're going to be one of the worst teams in the league, to be honest, next year.
I haven't been that impressed with their moves right now. I mean, Humphries, I think he's not the same player he was. Thank God it's only a year for the Celtics. But I don't think you get rid of Rondo at this point. Like you said, he's pretty much the star of the team. He's going to be a huge influence on the offense. And I think Stevens, coming from a college background, kind of has experience with young hot guns a little bit. So I feel like maybe the two of them, if they have a sit down, talk to each other, they can sort of mesh and figure out, what works best, what plays and positions, certain people should be, and on set plays.
I mean, I think it was sort of came out of the blue. Like, before coaches usually get hired, their players go sign with other teams. You hear news, rumors. This player's going there. This coach might be the new coach here. And Stevens, the signing, 6 years, $22 million, just comes out sort of out of the blue, and no one really heard about it.
Right.
It wasn't really talked about. I think it's a great hire, like you said. I haven't liked their moves, but I think they were necessary, just because Kevin Garnett and Pierce were getting really up there in age.
Right.
They didn't have the greatest supporting cast, and I'd rather them be just terrible next year than be like a 7th or 8th seed and get swept in the first round.
Definitely.
But I think for Rondo, if you're going to have Stevens as your coach, I think Rondo really has to embrace the role of leader of the team. I mean, they're going to have one of the youngest rosters. I mean, Rondo's one of their oldest players, and he's only 27. So I think he has to be a leader, or you have to trade him for, cap room, stockpile draft picks. Because if you're going to, go the tanking route, if you're the Celtics, I think you have to be the worst, because next year's draft, they're calling it one of the best drafts in the decade. It's going to be stocked. Number 1 pick, I'm telling you, people out there, Andrew Wiggins.
All right. He's
going to be the next.
Andrew Wiggins.
He's supposedly the next LeBron. Like when LeBron James was coming out of high school, LeBron's the next Jordan. I think he's lived up to that. Wiggins is supposed to be the next LeBron. Supposed to be a freak of nature.
I can't wait to see him in the league.
If they don't get that number 1 draft pick, if they do tank, they say the top 5 draft picks, top 5 to 10 selection, the draft is supposed to be stacked next year. So I think I want the Celtics to tank it, to try to get that number 1 draft pick and get rid of Rondo and sort of stockpile picks here.
Right.
Or get young players.
As a Boston sports fan, I would rather not see the Celtics completely tank and miss out on the playoffs, after some great runs. Obviously, it hurts seeing them get, knocked out by the Knicks and stuff continuously. But I agree with you. I think a great move for the Celtics right now would just be to stockpile picks. I mean, they're clearly a team that's in a rebuilding phase. I think I wouldn't give up on Rondo yet. Yeah, he's got the bum knee, but I think he can still be a great asset to the team.
I mean, I agree. I don't agree. I think Rondo should be gone, but I obviously don't want to see them do bad, but just that they have the young coach. Rondo's sort of not a leftover, but he's one of the stars left over from the Doc. I think you have to,
era.
Yeah, I think you have to, if you're going to tank, you have to tank all out. You don't want to tank with Rondo and win 40 games and sneak into the playoffs as an 8th seed or barely miss and just stay middle of the pack. You either have to tank or try to improve with going forward with Rondo.
Right.
But the other biggest news here in the NBA, to touch on just a quick second, Dwight Howard leaves the Lakers, goes to Houston, leaves a lot of money on the table by not re-signing with the Lakers. I mean, Dwight Howard is just a drama queen to me. You know, the reports he's going to sign with the Houston, and then all of a sudden you hear, well, now he's thinking about going back to the Lakers. He's fickle, going back and forth.
Yeah.
And then stuff's coming out now that he wanted, if he was going to sign with the Lakers, he wanted to know that Kobe would be gone. You know, it's basically his, like this past season, Dwight and Kobe butting heads. That was basically the reason Dwight Howard didn't sign with the Lakers.
Right. I mean, I agree. I personally dislike the guy for his off-court antics. I think he's a prima donna as well. But, you know, at a certain point, you got to even stop reading those headlines like, oh, Dwight considers the Lakers. Oh, Dwight considers Houston. You know, ultimately, he takes his talents to Houston. I think it was a great move for him personally because I think Dwight and Harden is going to be something to look for. I mean, even without Dwight, Houston took the Oklahoma City Thunder to 6 games. And I think with, you know, this offensive addition, they're going to be a real threat in the West.
I mean, you hear that Dwight didn't like Mike D'Antoni, the coach of the Lakers, coaching style, you know, didn't mesh well with Steve Nash. And then he wanted to be the face of the franchise there for the Lakers. But he goes to Houston. This is what I'm a little troubled about. Do you think he'll be the face of the franchise there with James Harden? I mean, you got Jeremy Lin, but Harden's obviously the face there over Lin. Do you think it's still James Harden's team per se, or is it now Dwight Howard's team?
I think it's almost a Miami situation right now. I mean, I feel like it's not anybody's team. I think it's 50, maybe 50-50, 33-33, who knows? But I think going in, it's hard. Some spotlight's definitely going to be taken away from Harden, but no, I don't think he's taken over the franchise quite yet without playing a single game.
I know. I think you know, Houston is going to be a great team next year, and we'll have to see come playoff time next season how Dwight did for Houston here. So that wraps it up for another episode here of Sports Chatter TV. Again, I'm your host, Evan Bedell, alongside my co-host here, Steve Atkinson. And don't forget to tune in for another episode next week of some more exciting sports talk here at Sports Chatter TV.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.